Welcome to Buried Talent, the show for young professionals that tears down false beliefs about faith and work so you can unbury your God-given talent right where you are. I'm Ken Freire, and with my co-host Patrick Lowndes, and today we're talking about Gen Z got gypped. Or did they? Patrick, this is a weighty conversation because there are a lot of Gen Z people who got gypped. But before we jump into that, how have you been since the last time we chatted?
Oh yeah. Things are going well. I'm happy that in my house, a lot of kiddos, I'm happy when we're healthy for like a whole month straight. And watch, right? Because I'm saying this, it's just going to happen. But I'll be traveling a little bit next week over to a college, giving a great talk. So what we hope is going to be great. But yeah, it's been good being with the fam, being around home for the rainy days here in Seattle.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and for me, we're just getting ready here. My wife is due in mid-December with baby number 5. So we're
Wow.
just trying to get that ready. My son's birthday's coming up, so we're getting that ready. There's a lot of movement happening in our house.
Okay. Hey, some people might be like newly married and maybe they're pregnant, something like that. What are words of wisdom? 30 seconds to someone like as a guy trying to support a wife who's pregnant. What have you learned? Give us 30 seconds of wisdom.
Pray a lot.
All right.
There will be so many emotional moments that you're just like, why are you acting this way? And then I'm like, Lord, she's making a baby. All her hormones are out of whack. And you know what? It's hard.
Yep.
So I just got to give her a lot of grace and
There you
just
go.
pick up as much slack as you can because they're
There
going
you
to
go.
need it.
Yeah. As much as you can. Those are some good words. I like that.
Yeah. But how does that tie? How does any of that tie into our conversation today? I actually think there's a lot of Gen Z people who feel like they're working really hard, but all the promises that they got, there's no delivery on it. They got overpromised and there's under delivery.
Mm.
So let's talk about that today, Patrick.
Yeah. Yep. You and I are both millennials, Ken. So but
Yeah.
let's face it, Gen Z did not get dealt the same hand of cards as the millennials did. Some people have even, as it just done some more research on it, they call it just the hangover, right, of the
Yeah.
longest economic boom that we had, a bull market. We'll talk a little about economics, but yeah, it's just literally the playbooks that used to work are just not working. And so there's some macroeconomics we're getting into, and we're also going to hit kind of the elephant in the room is like, what's up, God? Like, what's going on here? Like, and what now? Like, how am I going to learn from anybody who went ahead of me 10 or 15 years or 20 or 30? Like, let's talk about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the biggest lies that I think Gen Z could be feeling right now is they're promised a lot of things. They're working really hard, and they might be wondering, has God just kind of skipped over our generation? And like everybody else had it great. The boomers had it amazing. Gen Z had it awesome. Millennials complained, but look at they're still doing pretty good. And now Gen Z is like entering the workforce and they're like, wow, it's kind of like they feel like they have their hands tied behind their back and now they're asking them to go swim a marathon.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I want to pull up. I got to just maybe hit on some macroeconomic baselines so we're all on the same page. So, can
Yeah.
I jump into a few of those things first, just to make sure we're on the
Yeah,
same page?
absolutely.
Okay, I think this will give a little bit of language. We're going to look at some quotes, what Gen Z is saying out there, and then we'll react to that, just like we always try to do on this show. But let me just break down a few things for you. The thing that we got to hit on that we're alluding to is this. I once heard it. Someone said, "Yeah, you were born in the ZIRP era." ZIRP, ZIRP, and what they meant was like the zero interest rate policy from about 2008 to about 2022. This is when like the central banks here in America were just flooding the market with cheap credit and capital, really just making it easy for companies to borrow money, raise capital, spend money, right? It was easier for companies to buy and sell and grow and basically prosper and thrive, right? For like a long period of time, 13 years, right? And so the millennials, yes, they were affected when they were coming to the workplace by the GFC, the great financial crisis, right? When the big mortgage industry fell out in 2008 and that affected 2009 pretty heavily. And unemployment was high, but guess what? Things bounced back really fast, right?
Yeah.
And so the, that macroeconomic context of like, hey, things were really great for 10 or 12 years, 13 years, it's sort of, if you're Gen Z, it's sort of like, well, yeah, you got this easy hand of cards to play, and now I'm getting like this horrible hand of cards to play. And so I think to some extent, Ken, like, yeah, Gen has gotten gypped if you're just looking at the macroeconomic facts of the day. And not to mention, there are certain AI booms and things that are, some industries are doing really well, but we got to dig into, we can't just say this is a copy and paste playbook from what worked in the 2010s. And like, we're going to try to use that here in the mid 2020s.
Yeah. And there are several people out there who have been talking about this for a long period of time, right? If you're on X or LinkedIn, there's a bunch of people who are constantly doing this type of work. So, for example, Merchant on X, he said this, and he was discussing Gen Z unemployment stats from unusual_Wales. He says Gen Z didn't get lazy; they got handed a degree, 80K in debt, and a broken job market. Boomers bought houses at 3x income. Gen Z can't even get hired. Or another one where this is Barefoot Student. He says this, or she, I actually don't know. Gen Z is shouldering a GFC-like collapse in hiring with no end in sight as offshoring ramps up and employers refuse to hire entry-level workers under the guise of AI. And then that last one is Big Nens says, yes, millennials have it easier than Gen Z. Gen Z are working harder. Inflation is wild. The cost of living keeps rising with salaries staying about almost the same. Y'all had more stability, clear career path. Gen Zs are figuring out survival in chaos. Now, when I read all those, as a millennial, I'm going to be honest, I got a little self-defensive. I'm like, no. We also had it hard. You don't understand X, Y, or Z. But like, we managed to kind of get out of the chaos a little bit. And like you said, our hands were not dealt as crappy of a hand as they are.
Yeah, that's right. And
So,
particularly like just thinking about, yeah, landing your job is one thing, but then like rent is going up in lots of places,
oh
right?
yeah,
And so like people are like, I got to try to maybe move out of the city and I got to start to live a more suburban or rural life, right? There's some other stats we don't have time to talk about in this episode about Gen Z's preference to having more of a hybrid kind of work-life balance where I'm not always in office. Like RTO, return to office, will be its own whole episode we'll have to do. But I just thought like the other thing is that, I mean, in this day and age, AI is trying to replace a lot of those entry level jobs. So you have to show up and like pack a huge punch in your career value. So given all of those things, as Christians, Ken, how do we stop and take a look at like the reality and then like what's true about us given our walk with God?
yeah. I think we have to always be honest with what's really going on. I don't want to sugarcoat it. And I also don't want to just sprinkle humanism on top of it where I say something like, you know what? You just got to figure it out, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And we had to do it. You got to do it too. It's like, that's not helpful for it because Gen Z is the future generation. And here, I just want to throw this in here as an ad lib. I remember other generations before us who would always say, hey, this generation is lazy. They're complaining. They're always whining. And I feel like every generation talks about the generations afterwards like that. But at the same time, they're also always the hardest working ones. Every generation is going to have lazy people and really hardworking people. So I don't want to come here and say Gen Z is not a hardworking. Absolutely. I've seen some Gen Z people who are putting immense amount of work to try to make things happen.
Yep.
At the same time, we have to take not just a superficial view of what's going on, and we need to take a supernatural view and say, God, what are you doing? And I believe God is actually preparing Gen Z to take on a greater leadership mantle. And you may be wondering, why do you think that? I'm like, well, there is a reason why God puts people through fiery furnace or through wilderness or through hardship. And it's because he's forming us to be something greater and preparing us to lead in a greater capacity.
Yeah. And just, I mean, just shooting straight from scripture. I mean, James 1 says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces what? Perseverance, right? And then later, like other passages like Romans 5 says, we rejoice in our sufferings because it produces perseverance, character, hope. And so if you're out there trying to like just slog away at job applications, or maybe you've got a job, and we're going to talk about this shortly as well, like how do you hang on to that job and actually stick around and survive layoffs and stuff like that. If you've got that job, it's like, how do we show up with knowing that there's trials, knowing things are hard, and how do we show up with hope that God is going to actually take care of us in the struggle? Or when you fill out that 164th application for a job, that God's still faithful and he's still going to provide, even if it doesn't look like how you thought it was going to look, right? And so it's just like, as Christians, we can be tempted just to mimic and parrot the sayings and the mindsets of the world. But Romans 12 is like, no, you got to redo your mindset. You can't just hit copy and paste on the world's narrative about the job market or how tough it is. It's like, what does it sound like to be filled with hope and to persevere, even if you're not getting what looks like success on the front side of that?
Yeah. And here's what we're saying and what we're not saying, because I want to be clear for everybody listening to this. There might be some millennials listening to this, right? There are certain perceptions or certain views that you may have as a Gen Zer that you're like, oh, I really want this in a job career, right? Like, I know some Gen Zers are expecting the high salary and the high leadership status, but never actually having the experience, right? That's a different podcast for a different day. What we're talking about here is specifically those of you who are like, I am trying really hard. I'm working as hard as I can, and I'm not getting the job. Mm-hmm. And understand it from a supernatural or spiritual sense. God is forming something in you. And what he's trying to form is dependency on him and resilience. Mm. Those are the two things that he's trying to form in you. So don't take this season of, hey, I've been sending a whole bunch of applications in and nothing's happening as like you're down and out and you give up. Don't give up. God is going to do something else.
Yep.
Also, know that there are other creative ways for you to land a job. And we actually talked about this on episode 10 on how to land your first job in 2025. And it'll be useful for 2026 also. So go check that out. But right now, as you're listening to this, I want you to just stay in a place of like, Lord, I'm going to trust you. This is harder, but we believe that Gen Z has been entrusted with something harder because God is going to work in you a holier type of dependence than other people might have had in other seasons.
Yeah. And this is also very relevant if you've got that job and you're working on developing yourself and keeping that job and trying to be effective, but maybe you're just not making that much and you're feeling like things are just tight, right? Like, and the hopelessness of, I'm never going to be able to afford a home, right? I'm never going to be able to fill in the blank, right? Remember that God has you in your place where you are for a reason right now. And this is not like empty promises from God. Like, who are we to say that God is not like literally planning out each day of your life and the situation and how much you're making, which company you're working at? I mean, the Bible says that God wrote down each day of your life before you lived one of them, right? And so we got to remember, like, he knows what's going to happen. And so the question is, how are we going to journey with him through the journey? I like C.S. Lewis's quote here: hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny, right? And think about that for a sec. Like, yeah, I'm struggling right now. Maybe I'm not making as much as I want. Maybe my job kind of like sucks. I don't really enjoy it. Maybe God is trying to work on something in you and you're not actually getting gypped. God has you in the trust spot, so you have to trust on him. Imagine if you had everything that was going your way and like you didn't even need God. You felt like, I think I'm doing pretty good. Like, God, thank you. That's all I'm going to say is thank you. But those of us who are struggling, I think this is the time we want to lean in on God. How can I rely on you as my hope? Rely on you as my joy. Rely on you as my provider, right? And I think like that's the kind of formation that C.S. Lewis is talking about. Hardships often prepare us ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. I want to hit on one example to kind of wrap today's episode up. This is an older Gen Z. He's like right on the edge. And I want to have him on the show at some point here. But JD Bauman, he was working in New York, doing some amazing work in the financial industry and making good money by the world standards and things like that. And we had a phone conversation and he told me about why he left his work to go really go deeper into what he felt like was more meaningful work. And so he founded something called Christians for Impact. You should go check it out. They have a podcast as well. And he is just like all into how do I bring about this effective altruism from a Christian perspective? How do I leverage my life and my giving and my generosity, my work to create the most optimal impact, which includes like not just giving to any random charity, but like ones that are most effective. Someone like JD, like again, he had this path he was on and he discerned like, God, like I'm on this path that the world might say is going well, but he said, no, like I'm not going to just phone it in and like, climb a career ladder. I want my life and my impact to count. And so I think there's examples like JD that said, hey, it's not just about the worldly success, Ken, but I want to be about kingdom of God success. I want to make a bigger impact, which is why he founded Christians for Impact. But that's one example, I'm sure, of many, many Gen Zers that are not just taking it on the chin from a tough market, but are saying, I'm going to kind of forge a path forward that leads to impact.
Man, that's so good to think about, that he decided to give up and he actually made his life harder in some ways.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. For eternal impact. So for those of you guys who are listening to this, just recognize we're not trying to excuse or minimize any hardship that you're going through.
No.
So please don't hear that from us. We truly believe God is using you right now and he's molding you. And that doesn't mean that you don't find another job or you don't do other things. Like if you're a barista at a coffee shop right now and you're like, really, I got $80,000 in debt and I got this college degree and the only job I could get so far is to be at a coffee shop. No, there's other ways, right? Other job opportunities out there. But in the meantime, while you're there, just remember God is with you. He's forming something in you. And it's not a lie that he's passing you by. He's actually using that very moment for you to work in you and work through you.
Yep. And on this next episode, you can keep listening to it. We're going to dive in. When you've got that job, how do you stay active? How do you be professionally vigorous to continue to develop yourself and make sure that you're continuing to add value every day you show up? So we'll catch you next time on Buried Talent.